What's up, gang? Welcome to the Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius and Nyesha. I'm so pumped to have you here with me. Now, listen, the Greatness Machine, we're about two things. Number one, people who are living their passions. And number two, those who are creating greatness in the world and doing both of these things despite the odds against them. Each episode, we're going to feature interviews with game changers, business leaders, telling us their origin stories, what made them tick, what got them to where they are now. Why? So it can help you step into your greatness within your life, your business, and your career. Occasionally, you might hear a few solo episodes from myself, moi as I say, as I leverage my 20 years of entrepreneurship as a CEO and founder to help you grow and level up in your journey to scale your life and your business. So, come be a fly on the wall, enjoy the conversation, and I'm stoked to have you here with me. Guys, welcome to today's episode of The Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius and Nyesha, and boy, do we have an amazing guest. Nyesha Arrington is in the house. What up?
That goes well. What up?
Oh, that was the first for me. I did the crowd goes wild.
Yeah, servants in their car at home or wherever they pod, cheering in my mind.
Nyesha, I am so excited to have you on the show. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, it's like literally my absolute pleasure. I love a good convo and I'm so here for it. It's an honor to be here.
Oh my gosh. So do you mind if I do a little bit of housekeeping and then we'll get rolling?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So for listeners who are new to the show, The Greatness Machine, we're about two things. People who are living their passions and those who are creating greatness in the world. And Nyesha is neither short of passion nor greatness. And we're going to talk about so many cool things today, but I want to give a little bit of background on how I stumbled upon Nyesha and her work. So I have two sons. And we're like a family that's like foodie family. We love going to great restaurants and we love making food. And we found this TV show called Next Level Chef with Gordon Ramsay. And so we're watching Next Level Chef. This is probably on a month ago. And my son and my youngest son, he's 9 years old, Pablo, who listeners have heard me talk about, and I are just obsessed with the show. We're like, and we started watching, we watched season 1, and I'm watching Gordon Ramsay and his other two chefs, and one of which was Nyesha. And I'm like, oh my God, I love her, man. She is such a badass. And there was just this, like, these moments where you're like super tough with the contestants. And I'm kind of a tough ass too. And I was like, man, I fucking love her, man. She's awesome. And so I did what I always do. I'm like, we got to get her on the show. So I hit you up and here you are. I'm so excited to get to talk to you about all the amazingness, but I'm gushing a little bit, but that's what happened. And that's how we're here.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for watching. It is so freaking amazing to be a part of it. It is like, I pinch myself because it's like, I mean, you mentioned, being able to work next to Gordon is a treat in itself, but also, I mean, the show's based in mentorship and it's so rewarding and fulfilling. It's a two-way street. So I'm honored to be on it, and I'm grateful that people see it and it resonates with people.
Yeah, it's such a cool show, and I want to talk about the show because it's such an interesting show, especially the concept around how they have the different levels. And for listeners that don't know, you got to check out the show. But we're going to talk all about the show in a little bit here. Before we go there, though, I want to do your formal bio, and then we can hop into your origin story if you're cool with that. Does that 100%, work?
100%, absolutely.
Awesome. So Nyesha Arrington, LA native, celebrated LA chef. You were a contestant on Top Chef season 9. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Oh, I'd love that show too. Chef of the Year by Eater in 2015. Eater, such a great source for where to go find the most amazing restaurants. And we're going to be talking about the co-star of Fox's TV's Next Level Chef with superstar chef Gordon Ramsay. Oh my gosh. And what's funny is like when I go through all the bios, because my team goes through and we like dig up everyone, and I probably missed 100 different things here, but actually before the show is funny, there was a chef that she worked for who's famous, and I'm trying to pronounce his name. It's French, and I was like, forget about it. So I'm just not going to say it. I'll let you get into your origin story. She like corrects me with like perfect French accent. I'm like, yeah, you do that, Nyesha. I'm just not going to say it. But yeah, so listen, I'd love to hear like you have seriously look, chef's a tough job, and you are a badass chef at that, and you've made it now in the world of celebrity chef. But there's for every one Nyesha, there's thousands of people that want to be chefs that never make it there. It's a hard business. it's a really hard job, and it's so rewarding for those that actually do make it. But I'd love to hear your origin story, because I know that you didn't just snap your fingers and it happened overnight. So I'd love to kind of take us back and, tell us a little bit about your origin story and what got you to where you're at right now.
Yeah, it's I think it's really about a process of reverse engineering. And it's funny that you say, and to hear even the term celebrity chef, because it's like, it's a trip, man. Like to be celebrated for something that you just, I'll say you kind of, for me, I innately have this passion for cooking within me. So to be recognized by a lot of people for that is, it feels like almost like a guilty pleasure because I love it so much. And yes, it's hard and it's arduous and it's challenging and there's days that you want to quit and it seems insurmountable. But to be able to do what I love every day, I think that's really the magic. You know, uh, I consider myself just a normal like person. I love to work hard. And I think that's really, as simple as it sounds, I don't think there's any magic ingredient that I have within me that the next person doesn't. I think it is, truly this willingness to strive for for fulfilling your dreams, and that takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of effort over time, right? To have that sum equal the greatness of your dreams. For me, that started when I was probably about 4 or 5 years old, and I was cooking. I was in the kitchen, as you mentioned, your son who loves to cook, those early memories started for me around, the same age, 4 up until, through being a young person up and through adolescence, high school. I've always loved cooking and and all of the arts really to say that, and food happens to me my greatest medium of self-expression. Um,
Mm.
and I think ultimately, Darius, I think that if I would have chosen probably anything really, I just have this mindset of like, I mentioned earlier reverse engineering. It's about creating the goal and then really being meticulous about what steps it takes to get there, right? Like seeing that big picture and then saying, if whether that's a structure, a building, you're like, okay, what nail am I using? What are the materials I'm putting into this? And so, and that in itself, right, in building, um, sort of that like life recipe, making that, creating that, um, it takes it takes time, right? It takes a lot of growth opportunities, right? I don't like to maybe say failures. It takes time for those areas of growth where you feel like you're in the trenches, you're in the hole, you can't see the light. I think it takes a lot of resilience to get to um, this place, whatever it is that I am now, and I think that when I'm in this level, in this circle that I am now, I think it's just only one chapter of my life journey, as there has been many and as there will be many more. Um, but I will say one thing that I've had now in most recent, you know, months even, I have now this sort of bandwidth and mindset to be able to look back and see the landscape, right? And now
Hmm.
having this opportunity to now mentor more people and come across new faces and get really more so a bird's eye perspective as opposed to being so immersed in it. I'm able to help other people, and that for me is everything because, as you mentioned, coming from Top Chef, being in these cooking competitions and, being in these restaurants, there sometimes you have to make the mistakes firsthand, and to be able to now have made them all and now be able to say and help other people and say, maybe don't do this and offer this bit of information based off of lived experience is, I think, is so invaluable. I think
Yeah.
it really is, coming up, played lots of team sports. I did martial arts, I took lots of art classes. And I think, my parents putting me in those sort of extracurricular activities outside of school helped me like garner this tool belt where it's like, okay, this is how you be a team player, right? This is how you exercise a skill. Here's how you have staying power, because you don't want to go to softball practice today because you're tired or whatever, but you go anyways, and it builds that discipline, you know. And I think ultimately anyone who has any level of success, for sure, there's a through line of discipline, you know. I think that's really a beautiful thing to celebrate.
Do you consider like, so growing up, did you consider yourself like, were you like a pretty like hardcore disciplined person, or was this like something that gradually happened over time? Like if you were to just like characterize yourself as a young adult, or you know, like in high school and teenager, like how would you say disciplined on a scale of 1 to 10? How disciplined were you? Like when it came to things you loved? Because teenagers, like if I didn't want to do, like I was always a disciplined person, but it had to be something I cared about.
Sure, that makes sense. You know, honestly, I attribute a lot of that to my grandmother. She was really the like hard ass that was like, you're gonna learn what discipline is, and you're gonna like go read this book before you go out and play with your little friends, and like you're gonna wash these dishes. And you know, my dad and my mom being like, you're gonna rake these leaves and take out the trash and do life skill things. So I think over time, right, if I'll use the analogy in like fitness, like putting in those reps, right, building that muscle, I think as a kid that transcended into adolescent stages, and then, you know, going through high school and, you know, learning about who I am, who am I, you know, and then translating that into adulthood. I think, you know, over time, those reps got stronger and it translate into different ways, you know. So I think it's something that can be a learned trait. I don't think anyone just comes out of the womb disciplined. I think it takes a lot of external emphasis and influence from people around you.
And so when you know, when you were young, were you like, yeah, you know, obviously you said when you were like 3, 4, or 5 years old, you're like, oh, you know, you loved cooking. And it sounds like your grandmother was a big influence. Was she the influence around the cooking as well?
She was, yeah, definitely the influence and the discipline and life skills. I think that was her big thing that she wanted to leave, you know, with her grandkids, was life skills, tools, right? Like we eat, you cook. Like we didn't have Postmates back then, you know, like different world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, you know, I think that, and, you know, for sure, I remember tasting her food and thinking, this is what love tastes like, you know?
Yeah.
For sure. And even as a kid, and it's like, that shit is powerful, you know? And that has resonated with me into my adult life, you know? And so I'm on this constant journey to evoke that emotion in people. And I will say, honestly, almost to a detriment, you know, everything is so precious and it's so meaningful. It's so impactful. Like everything matters, you know, especially, you know, as you're coming up as a chef, you know, celebrating ingredients and individually breaking down techniques to create that vision that you have, right? That's intangible in your mind, to then create it for someone else to enjoy that, for it to live in their soul, is like a gift. It is such a powerful gift to share with the world.
Yeah, I love that. And so when you were growing up, I grew up in a family, I'm half Persian, half Italian. So, and my Italian family is like, my grandfather was like straight up from Italy, and we made Italian food fresh, like from scratch, grew tomatoes in the backyard. And like, that was what I grew up around, right? Homemade focaccia bread, homemade everything, right?
Yes.
And then on my other side, and so on the other side is my Persian side of the family. And I always joke, I say Persians are the Italians of the Middle East. You know,
I can see that.
They're like family oriented, yes, and they celebrate food, and they're like, you know, they got like and the funny thing is, like, Persian guys would lie and say they're Italian, right, when they don't want you to know they're Persian. Yeah. So if you live in LA, you know what I'm talking about. So it's kind of, there's a lot of overlap there. A lot of gold chains and leather jackets.
Yeah, for sure.
So what type of food, like when you think back to like for me, like my childhood was homemade gnocchi. Yes. Know, it was like this like thing where like it changed my life. Like, yes. I was like, I can't eat. We didn't eat out that often. We made our own food. Like homemade bread was like things I grew up eating. What was your like fondest memory of food as a child?
Wow, there's been so many, Darius. And that's the beautiful thing as you've celebrated and been able to tap into different parts of your heritage. Like, same, more times than not, we would celebrate the major holidays at my aunt's house, my dad's sister. And those are some of my most fond memories, right? Like Aunt Linda's mac and cheese,
Mm,
oh my gosh, my other Aunt Dee Dee's potato salad, my mom's sister making delicious gumbo, right? And then going to other parts of my family and sitting around a table making dumplings. Coming from a multicultural background, I was able
right.
to sort of transcend these ideas of, what food can look like at the dinner table, right? And step into different worlds based on what household I was in that day. And being an Angelino and a product of Los Angeles, had access to amazing Latin food and Mexican cuisine and, Ethiopian food and amazing, just different uh, neighborhoods in Los Angeles, right? So all of that kind of goes up into my upbringing and like my food memories, right? Like thinking about different places that we would hit up as kids. Like my dad was so stoked on these like Ramona's burritos, and like we'd go there and like, Fat Burger, just like these like institutions when I was a kid, other than going to, my grandmother's house and having the most spicy Korean food, or going to, my dad's side of the family and have these soulful dishes out of Mississippi that were like Southern comfort. That in then another layer being rooted in Los Angeles, like it made for a very robust childhood of memories and food, um, and I don't know why my soul, greater being chose me to be that food person, because I was like for sure the kid and like in the back of the car, my parents driving, and I would always like scope out restaurants. Just remember like being in the back seat, like looking for restaurants and thinking about them as establishments, just a whole little like kid entrepreneur, like thinking about these things and always kind of innately knowing that I would be in that field one day.
That's crazy.
I
I love that.
know,
That's like you like living your calling, right?
literally.
That's a yeah, like legit, and to know that at a young age, that's a gift. And so, when did you consciously make the decision when you're like, yeah, I'm gonna go and do this food thing?
It's so funny. There's a few touch points. I remember this house. We used to live in this place, Lancaster, California, and grew up there for most of my adolescent stages in life before I came back to LA. And I was standing in the kitchen, and I remember having this sort of epiphany. I had to be like 10 years old. And I asked my dad, I said, why aren't there restaurants where it's like every day is a different cuisine? Like, I was like, Dad, like it could be like one day it's Persian food, next day it's like Ethiopian, next day it's Chinese. Isn't that cool? And he was like, yeah. He's like, who is this kid? Probably, he's just like, and I remember like getting this piece of paper, and I wrote on it A+1 good restaurant. And I was like, that could be the name. Like, how like basic is that? As a kid, I had the whole name. I was like, A+1 good restaurant. And I was like, yes. And my dad's like, yeah, well, that'd have to be a pretty big pantry. And I was like, yeah, yeah. It was just like, that was totally one of those memories that just stuck with me as a kid. And, just like fast forward when I had my first restaurant, I come from a very blue collar, like, family, basic food, nothing too crazy. Like we
Yeah.
weren't eating tasting menus and going out and things. So when I first had my restaurant, I had my dad at my chef's table, and I was able to share with him on a plate what it is I actually do, right? Because by then I'd gone through all these crazy, fancy, fine dining, white tablecloth, one percenters only eat their restaurants, right? And I did that for 10 plus years. But, I never brought that home. That to them, I'm just Nyesha, their daughter, right? So when I was able to exercise my skills on a plate in my restaurant for my dad, I remember standing on the other side of the chef's table, and, he looked up at me, and he had like a tear like fell out of his eye, and he was like, Nyesha, like, you did the thing that you said you were going to do when you were a kid. He's like, do you have any idea like what that means and how powerful that is and how proud of you I am? You know, like you never wavered from that. You like you always knew. And so, I don't know that there was ever generally a conscious decision. I will say the fundamentals were always there. I remember when I graduated high school, I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And that summer after high school, I graduated in the year 2000. Um, I kind of hung out, obviously still my parents' house. And I remember going to this like get together and my friend I was like, oh, where you been all summer? And he's like, oh, I'm in culinary school. And I was like, what? That's a thing? Like, they don't tell you that in high school. Like, you could be a chef. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
be a doctor, be a lawyer, or whatever, and I was like, oh my God. So, like, literally went home, begged my parents to take me to this culinary school, and I enrolled. And I went that fall. And, I remember, Darius, sitting the first day of culinary school, I sat, like, school was kind of a drag, like generally speaking, right? Like, of course, I went, got grades, did things, but like, I never felt that fired up in my soul to go to school. Like, I sat first
Right.
day, dead center, front row, Chef Chapman's class, and I was just drinking every word this man had to say out of his mouth. I was like, this is incredible. Like, tell me everything. And first class was stocks and sauces, and I just went in a rabbit hole for 22 years and didn't look up until last
Wow.
year when I got on Next Level Chef.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I'm so fortunate. I'm so fortunate to have found something that feeds my soul in a way, the way it does, because I'll always have this thirst for the knowledge. It's an ever changing field.
Yeah.
So many flavor combinations. It's an artist's dream.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think of food like that. It isn't like I probably in my former life was a chef. I
Mm,
love cooking,
mm.
so it's like put me in the kitchen. I don't want to clean the kitchen up, but I will cook your face off,
Yes, yes.
And it's like I got to be creative. I mean, I don't care if I'm making coffee like by hand or I'm making an egg. It's like
Ah,
I've got to make it it's delicious and perfect and crack the pepper on it,
ah.
like all these little things. And then I feel you, right? So I get it. And I guess my question for you is like realizing you want to be a chef, and then taking that leap to TV. I mean, there's definitely a gap there, right? Like anyone, like not anyone, but a lot of people can go and like go through culinary school and find their way into a kitchen and work. And if they're good enough, they can make it in a restaurant. I think that's a pretty feasible like thing, right? Um, there's lots of opportunities for that to become the best, and less opportunity that's going to be based off of hard work and skill. And obviously you did all those things and worked in some amazing kitchens and ran some big restaurants and all that good stuff. And you have tons of accolades, but to do that, but there's for every one person that does that, there's probably like, I don't know, 100th of a person that actually makes it on TV as a celebrity chef. I mean, like we have a family friend, Aron Sanchez, right? Um, and I know his story. He like worked in his mom's restaurant in New York City, and then like finagled his way on TV, right? Like, so there's got to be an intention. I think if you want to go in that direction, at least from my perspective, like, were you like, yeah, I want to be, the next Anthony Bourdain? Like, how did that come to be where you're like, hey, I'm going to take this step on the TV? Because I think that those are two different decisions, at least from my seat. Maybe I'd love to hear your insights.
Yeah, great question, which has a multifaceted response. First of all, big Aaron Sanchez fan. We actually shot something together in the pandemic on digital, on my digital series that I have called Plateworthy, and he's just a joy. I love me some Aaron Sanchez. Um,
Such a cool
are you
dude. Such a
kidding
cool
me?
dude. Yeah.
He's like he has like seized life. That he's just got that spirit where it's just beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really like him, man. He's a good dude. We celebrated Thanksgiving together a few years
Oh
ago, so he's a good.
wow.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Shout out to Aaron. Um, yeah, so like I think, as people say, there's like levels to this shit. Um, there's been levels to me, right? Learning, growing, different perspectives. I will say if you asked 2008 Nyesha, like if she would have ever been on television or called herself TV chef, or other people call herself celebrity chef, I probably would have said 100% not, because for me,
Really?
yeah, it was very much two different parallels of what it is, what it means to be a chef, right? For me, in that era of my life, it was all about being a restaurant chef, right? And that was
Mm.
what, quote unquote, validated me. But that's what the landscape was. At that time there was this legacy of Anthony Bourdain's just, unfolding, right? Um, you know, Food TV in general hadn't for sure reached, you know, the heights of where it is today. We had the Food Network, we had some PBS programming. Essence of Emerald, I think, was one of the pioneers in this idea of what it is to be a celebrity chef, quote unquote. There were a lot of food personalities, but for me, I feel like Emerald really took it up a notch, kicked it up a notch, or, like he was the guy
Bam.
for sure, dude. Oh my God. And I was definitely that little nerd kid that would run home to watch him. Like I was that,
Yes.
and Iron Chef. Like I was like, not forget the cartoons. I was like, watch and that's the thing. I was like studying the craft as a kid, not knowing, Um, and then, I will say that specifically, a specific memory was when I was working for legendary chef, Monsieur Joël Robuchon, and, I was in his 3-star Michelin restaurant, only lady in there. And, I think I remember watching TV and there was a commercial, right? Just a regular old TV program, not the Food Network. And there was a chef there and he was in his like busy kitchen and doing the things, and you don't know what the commercial's about. And then it pans out. And the commercial's about a watch. It's a watch commercial. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like a chef is being celebrated in a different vertical, a watch commercial. And I was like, wow,
Right.
like chefs are like kind of becoming the new rock stars, I was like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And then I remember around that time, like Gordon Ramsay was having some like phenomenal programming and starting to, have these cool shows. And, for me, you asked me, did I want to be the next Anthony Bourdain? Like for me, like he was like my freaking everything. Like I
Mm.
was devastated when he passed.
Yeah.
Like devastated. Like when I first, I was definitely this kind of like surly, like bought into the culture of like what it was to be like a line cook and a chef in the early years of 2000, just kind of like on this like sailor ship, like rugged, just like sharp knife. Nothing else mattered to me than just freaking cooking. Like and like when I read Kitchen Confidential, I loved it. And I was like, this is the life for me. Like, like this is cool. This is
Yeah.
rock star shit. And, I just read it cover to cover and the words could not jump into my brain quick enough. I was like, thing just felt familiar. I was like, I lived this life before, or I was creating this future for myself in the moment. Like, I don't know, but Anthony Bourdain, I mean, I just really appreciated, respected the way he used his words, the way he expressed himself, the way he was one opinion, and I think there's a lot of respect in that, to have an opinion, because it wasn't just like mainstream, go with the flow, stand and stir, everything's just butterflies and sunshine, and it was cool. He was kind of the voice of the line cooks back then, and
Yeah.
oh, are you kidding me? I adore him. And so, I think naturally, people have told me that they're like, you should be the next Anthony Bourdain. And I'm like, shit, I would love to travel and talk about food and meet these salt of the earth humans. Like that is the driving force of me cooking, because like we're in the people business, so Yeah,
Oh yeah,
being this like meeting these salt of the earth people and getting to celebrate their stories, share mine, and create these new dishes, I love that. That for me is the essence of why we cook. I think for me to now be celebrated on television for what I do, it is an added value because the way that I look at it, only a certain amount of people can patron your restaurant, or only a certain amount of tickets you can sell to a dinner. But to be able to be put in front of 15.5 million people and share your voice, right? Share your soul is like a larger footprint, So it's one facet of what I do. I'll never not love being in the kitchen, but I will say, I don't know that there's another program that I've enjoyed more than being on this program. It's like really rewarding.
yeah. I want to jump into that. I have so many questions. So for listeners who are not familiar with the show, would you mind kind of telling them the premise of the show, and then I'd love to kind of take one step back and say like, how'd you get the show? Because I mean, I'm going to take a wild guess that you didn't just call up your boy Gordon and be like, hey man, like I heard you're doing a new show, like why don't we do it together? And then I'll let you know if I'm available.
Yeah,
Is that how it
totally.
went? I thought that's somehow it might have gone down. I just want to make
Yeah,
sure I got
yeah.
the story straight.
Right, right. I just text him like, I'll get back to you. It's not a big
Yeah.
deal.
Let me check my schedule and see if I can do your show, bro.
Yeah,
I may or may
exactly.
not.
No, it's not like a lifelong dream or anything. You want to know something that's really crazy? And like without sounding too like woo woo woo, there's power in manifestation for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
100%. You got to put that energy out there. And I remember this is a real true whole ass story. I was like scrubbing the line down in this restaurant, 2-star Michelin. And I remember like thinking in this moment, I was like, this sucks. I'm freaking exhausted. It's like 12 a.m. We just got our asses kicked. I love this, but like, what's the goal here? Like, you don't want to get sort of chained to the stove, that proverbial chain, right? You should evolve like in any business, right? You evolve
Sure.
and you grow, right? So that's when I looked at like who's killing it. This is like 2005 or 6. And I was like, Gordon is the guy, man. He's got the stars, he's got the shows, he's got everything. And I was like, that's my North Star. Like he's a good sort of goal, right? Someone to emulate and understand that you can do it all. And I thought, okay, that's cool. Like that was a fleeting thought. Go back to scrubbing, blah blah blah. Like probably what 2008 or 9. That's when I was in Robuchon kitchen, and I remember he came through and walked through the kitchen, and I was like, oh my god, it's Gordon Ramsay! Like this is incredible, and I got to like say hello, and like that could have been it for me. I'd have been like stoked. Oh my gosh, lifelong dream, met Gordon Ramsay. Fast forward, I think it was 2014. I was cooking at this event. He walked up, he tasted my dish. He was like, oh my God, this is delicious. And I was like, took a picture with him, and he's like so tall. And I was just like, this is amazing. And then that could have been it. And then, so I got a call, like, I think it was the first thing I did after the pandemic, 2020. And, they're like, hey, are you interested in being a guest judge for MasterChef? And I was like, yeah, 100% yes. So I went to for the finale to like do a demo, like a cooking demo. They're like, what do you want to cook? And I was like trying to think like, what is something that can test the skill of a chef? So I was like, I'm going to sear this beautiful ribeye, make a beautiful simple dish, right? But technique, like simple upon the eye, but actual like layers and depth of technique, right? To pull it off in a beautiful, elegant way, right? So a pomme puree, or fancy word for, mashed potatoes, but French Robuchon style, right? Beautiful kind of feed herb salad and a delicious green peppercorn sauce. So I'm such a sauce person. So at the time when I went on the show, I didn't even know that like Gordon had worked for Joël Robuchon also. And so when I made the pomme puree and I made this dish, I think probably that he recognized and that resonated with him, and a few standout memories from that moment were I remember the vibe, right? The intangible vibe of walking on the set felt different than any other set that I'd walked on. This is, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when I just started doing TV, right? I'd probably been on like a Food Network set. I'd probably been like, a couple other like different sets around. And this one felt like I was walking into like a kitchen energy, like where it's like there's a chef, right? So it was perfect because I was like, it's TV land and it's also, fundamentals. There's technique, there's cooking. It's a kitchen land also in one. And so, I was there demoing my dish, but also there as a student too, because
Mm-hmm.
he gave such an amazing feedback for me doing the demo. And I was like, wow, that was so cool. Like I walked away feeling like, wow, I felt like so fulfilled. And at the end of it, my demo and I gave this speech. He said, do you have any parting words? It's been so incredible watching you cook. And oh, it was just such an energy. And I spoke to the three chefs left and I said, how I approach cooking is like the mindset of an athlete, right? Like it's like every day you walk in that kitchen, you're going to the Super Bowl or you're going to the NBA All-Star game or it's the World Series. Like every day is game day, right? And so, I think something resonated, and not too far after his team reached out and said, hey, we're working on this new show. Would you be interested in chatting more about it? And I remember I was in New York at the time and I freaking fell out of my seat. Like, what? Like, this is incredible. Like, they told me the premise of the show and yeah, not being too far out of cooking competitions myself, I thought, wow, this is the perfect sort of segue for me because, I like just cooking. I don't want to feel so judgy, like I'm on the other side of the table and I'm here to judge your food. And it's so in a box, it's cool because I still get to be in the kitchen with them. So when they were talking to me about the idea, the platform, the levels, and I was like, this is amazing. Like, this can't be real. So, I said, of course, yes, please. I would love to. And so, that was season 1 last year or pardon me, the year before last. And now we're here on season 2. And, I mean, it's like, it's a continued education for me because every day, like you said, not a lot of people get the opportunity to work next to Gordon. The guy is, he's just unreal. Like his level of excellence is like,
Yeah.
it's incredible. It is powerful and it makes you want to be the best version of yourself, and it's like, and that is an undertone of who we are as chefs in general. Right. So it's really inspiring. I wake up excited to go to work. I go to bed excited, call it work if it is even that. But yeah, that's kind of how it happened for me to end up on there.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's such a cool story.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Like, and I love the manifestation side of it. And some people are like, oh, that's woo woo. But it's like, my thoughts around this are there's a really cool book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. Have you ever heard of this book?
No.
It's amazing. Every artist should read this book and
Wow.
every business person should read this book. And he talks about this thing called resistance and that our brain creates resistance to talk us out of fulfilling our passions and dreams. And it's a really quick read. But I just find like to not give yourself, I think like manifestations around like removing that resistance, saying like, I'm just going to say it. Cause if you don't say it, it's impossible it'll happen. Right. If you don't think it's possible, I guarantee you it's impossible. And so for you to even just like throw that inkling of possibility out in the world and for that little inkling to roll into a snowball of you actually now co-starring on a show with the person who you were like, fangirling around, I don't think that's by accident. I think that's part of that energy that you put out there. I'd love for you to tell our audience who don't know the show, the premise of the show, because I think it's incredible and I think it's super interesting. And then I have tons of questions about just like the premise around like me giving you a bunch of stuff and saying, go make food and then turning it into something awesome, which is, I'm kind of giving away what the show's about, but a little bit, one part of it at least. So yeah, tell our audience a little bit about the show.
Yeah, I'd love to. For like, for people who haven't watched it, I would say just to give a kind of broad stroke of thought, it's kind of like for me, I would say, so there's a Netflix movie called The Platform, right? Where there's like this platform that goes up and down these levels. So picture that, right? It's kind of like part Survivor in a way. There's teams, you're all like competing to be number one. Um, so there's human interest there. And then, it's a cooking competition, all sort of rolled into one. You have these, and I also kind of like feel like the perspective of how they shoot it is incredible because it's almost like you're in the freaking kitchen. It's not like there's four walls. It's almost like you took an fully operational, building. You got the hugest saw in the world. You cut it in half, and then people get this like first person experience. Like you're in it. Like you're almost like in this like huge VR set, like watching, through this.
Yeah.
And so that's a really cool perspective. And so, to be able to be a part of it is so fulfilling. There's these three different levels, right? You have this basement kitchen where there's like knobs on stoves don't work. Like half the pans are like beat up, like nothing really makes sense. It's dark, it's a little dingy. It's kind of like the basements that we grew up in, right? Like freaking chefs, Gordon, like working in the basement peeling potatoes, kitchens that like I've definitely had to be in these basement kitchens, and you kind of work your way up, right? And that's the premise of the show. Then you have this like middle kitchen where it's like a sort of standard working kitchen. Everything's operational. You might do some like catering events out of it. It's pretty no frills, but everything works and it's lit great, right? And then you have the top level kitchen where it's like the sort of pristine multi-million-dollar 3 Michelin star level kitchen where you have like smokers and sous vide machines and like it's just beautiful. You have access to great spices and just a pantry full of ingredients, and it's very whimsical, right? Like you get the first pick of ingredients, right? So if you're the team that wins, right, you had the best dish in the previous week, you get the first pick of ingredients that sit on this beautiful platform, right? So if the premise of the show that day is game meats, the platform has like all these beautiful, pheasants and game birds and quail and deer and so you grab all your ingredients, then it goes down to the second level. Second level gets second pick, then down to the basement gets whatever's left, right? So the idea in that is that it sort of levels the playing field, if you will, because each skill set of the individuals that are competing vary, right? And this is the first I've seen that's really unprecedented actually about this show, right? And actually where we are as a society in terms of, how we consume content these days. What does it actually even mean to be in the food space, right? Because now we have social media influencers, we have home cooks, and we have professional chefs, right? Whereas before, you might have only had professional chefs in these cooking competitions, but you see it on all social media platforms. Now people want to be in this food vertical, right? Celebrities that aren't even in food want to be in these food verticals, right? And are making food content. And so we have these like, people with millions and millions and millions of followers who create videos come and compete on these shows, right? And crush it, right? And then you have professional chefs.
Like a TikTok. I was like, TikTok chef, really? And they kill it.
Yeah.
Some of them are like blow your mind,
Dude. Yes, and that's the thing. It's really no more gatekeeping, right? Because just because you aren't in a professional chef environment doesn't mean you don't know how to, render your beef fat and sear your beautiful ribeye and make a medium rare steak gorgeously, right? So it's interesting to see. And so it really levels the playing field. Some people get first pick, some people get last pick. You're in the best kitchen, you're in the worst kitchen. Like, you're on a team challenge and then you're on a single challenge, and we sift through and we constantly boil down until the cream rises to the top. And then we get one winner out of that huge, thousands and thousands of applicants. So long vetting process. Ultimately they win $250,000 to fuel their culinary dreams, right? Nice chunk of change. And the like invaluable piece of it is they get a 1-year mentorship outside of the show from myself, Richard, and Gordon, 3 months each, we mentor them, or 4 months
No,
each.
that's by far the most valuable piece, if you ask me.
Absolutely.
So that's insane. So so I have so many like funny thoughts about the show, but I wanted, first of all, I wanted, so I watched the first episode of season 1, and I'm, you know, and I'm also, first of all, I'm not a TV watcher. Like, I don't watch TV. I watch a little bit. I watch like Succession, new season just came out, and I'm fired up about that, right? But I read a lot of books, and I don't really watch much TV, and I really don't watch reality TV.
Yeah.
And so my kids wanted to watch the show, and I'm not, and I've seen Gordon before, and I have a comment about him in a second, because my older son loves Hell's Kitchen, so he likes Hell's Kitchen, and my younger son wanted to watch this show. And so I'm watching it, and I see Gordon, and first of all, he seemed way nicer than he does in other shows. So I'm like, why is he being so nice?
Aww.
But I have a question about that. I'm like, that's probably how he really is. That was my thought. But I was like, and Nyesha's kind of a hard ass. And so instantly, I swear to God, I was like, I want to interview her. Like I was drawn to that because I was a Division I athlete in college. I was CEO of a big company.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a fucking hard ass too, right? I'm a lover who's a hard
That's
ass.
the thing.
Like I will, and I saw you, and you did that, and I was like, I like her, man. So tell us a little bit about that. Is that your deal? Like, you're just kind of a hard ass? I want to hear about that.
Oh, how do I answer this? You know, I don't mean to come off as a hard ass, and even like when we do like interviews, Gordon would be like, she's tough. And I'm like, oh my God, this is coming from Gordon Ramsay. Am I too tough? And it's like, you know, you get varying, how do I say, responses from people that are watching that are like, oh my gosh, you're so mean. Oh my gosh, you're incredible. You know, and it's like, for sure, I don't have a mean bone in my body. There's no ego behind me giving direct, very blunt feedback to people for them to freaking win. Like I said, every day for me is game day. And I'm like, my sole responsibility is to see you through. If your shit is not on point, you better freaking believe I'm going to tell you. And I unfortunately don't have the luxury of having, you know, that 4-month mentorship time in one show to tell you how to coax that out of you slowly. I got to be like, it's not right. Throw that shit away and do it again immediately. You know what I mean? So some people can take it and some cannot. A lot of, you know, the toughness, if you will, comes from purely the time restraint. You know, I just don't have a lot of time to get the point across. So, you know, sometimes I got 4 or 5 people in these kitchens, and I want to give everyone a lot of individual attention. So, you know, I came up hard, man. I came up in a different time, early 2000s, when, you know, for sure I wasn't, we'll say the term babied, you know, it was very, very tough love. Like a lot of the kitchens I came up in were just very tough, man. And, you know, I think coming from that cloth, you just set this level of excellence that you have to strive towards. And sometimes it's not attainable, but it's like, you're able to just see every perspective, see the field, see every facet. And sometimes you see things 10 miles away before a lot of these chefs can see it when it's in their face. And it's like, your goal is to like get them to see these things too, you know?
Yeah.
And so you just care so much. It's rooted in passion. It's rooting in striving for excellence. And it's not rooted in me putting someone else down for me to look better, you know?
Yeah, no, I don't, that's not what I meant at all.
No.
I think that, yeah. And so one of the things though, and you just touched on this, and I'd love I'd love to hear your feedback on this. So, there's a book called Grit by Angela Duckworth. And she's, I don't know if you've read that book. It's an amazing book. And it's about, you know, how do you build resilience in people, right? And that she uses the example of this program at West Point called Beast, which is what they put all the new applicants through to weed them out, right? And they're trying and they're trying to figure out what is it that makes people have grit, have resilience, right? And so, and I consider myself like a pretty gritty person. And so I saw that in the way you were not dealing with people's bullshit on the show, but not in a mean way, in a way that was like, hey, like if you want to win this thing, like there's just a level you're going to have to, like, you will get weeded the fuck out of this just because this is a machine that does it. And I knew it was coming from the good spot. I would love to hear your thoughts on like, what do you think? Because I think I think the world today is softer than when like we're pretty close in age. I'm a little bit older than you, but and you come from a multicultural background, as do I. And I don't know, man. Like I come from a blue collar background. Like my parents were putting up with shit.
Not shit for a second.
Like,
yeah.
So for me, it was just kind of like trial by fire. By the time I was like 18, 19, I was like, dude, this is like, you got to grind if you want to get. And so that's natural. But I see now it feels like that's like there's participation trophies and softness and you got to baby people. And I'm like, fuck that shit, dude. Like I tell my kids, I'm like, look, you might grow up with some privilege, but I'm going to fuck your shit up and make you tough, And I think parents need to do more of that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on like, what do you think gets people, like, do you think that that's necessary for people to really achieve greatness? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Wow, wonderful question. Well, I will say this. I think it's important to have this idea where life is not so precious. I mean, every single thing you do is not so precious, right? It always doesn't come back. It's not all about you, right? Like that person, right? There's such a larger dynamic that happens in our world as we contribute to it of the human race. And I think that we have to ask ourselves, like, where are we going as a human race, right? Like, are we getting, you're right, there's this idea of like when the strong survive, right? Survival of the fittest and all of this. But it's like, us in America, where we fit in the world as a global entity, what are we contributing to our lives and our future selves, right? Not even in our lifetimes, right? But, our previous ancestors and like, where are we going? So I think mental toughness and that grit and that resilience contributes to the staying power of humanity,
Yep.
for sure. And I think that that's not always with, this idea of being spoon-fed things. I think going out and earning something, it like resonates in you, right? And it gives you something to give to someone else. And I think, that's a way of saying for me, I think that there's got to be this level of like, you have to earn your shit, and I see that like, I think previous generations, our generation, like definitely had to work for shit. Like you said, 18, like, wow, if you want anything worth having, you're going to have to freaking work for it. I'm noticing, and what I hear from a lot of my peers in the restaurant world today are like, it's a different vibe, especially post pandemic. Like people aren't as ready to give it their all, like before, when I would be like going in 5 hours before my shift because I knew I was in the shit and I couldn't get through all my prep and run dinner service if I didn't work off the clock or stay 3 hours after, or whatever, and it's like you just have to have this buy-in. And I think it seems like the dialogue is a bit different now, and sort of not deferred gratification. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, my perspective on this is it's going to make it easier for the grinders to win. Because I agree with you. The dialogue is like quiet quitting and, that's a microaggression and all that shit. Right. And I'm not trying to like, I'm being a little bit,
cheeky.
I'm yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But there's truth to some of what I'm saying too, which is like, if you're a grinder and don't give a fuck and you're just going to go and kill it no matter what, like that's got to be an advantage from my perspective if everyone else is like running a little slower.
Yeah.
And if the world's more competitive then and probably rightfully so. Like, I don't think like, man, I'm like, I always joke, I'm 44. I go, I'm like the last generation where you could beat your kids. Like,
totally.
Like, so like that probably wasn't good either, right? So, but I saw that in you, that you had like kind of that eye of the tiger when you're on the show. And I was like, I guess my question for you is, do you think like the people that like season 1, right? The girl that won's native, right? And I mean, I'm sorry if you're listening and you haven't seen the show, like you don't know, like forget what I just said. But like she grew up in a gritty environment, right? If you're native, like, and grew up in reservation environment, that's a gritty environment. Like you got your cards stacked against you. Did you see that element in a lot of the contestants, that they had that grit, or did you think that some of them that got eliminated didn't have that? They had like maybe overconfidence because they'd never been tested at the higher levels. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, great question. I think that, you know, that's the beautiful thing about this sort of, you know, being put under this kind of environment, right? You see so many different walks of life in one room, right? And you're kind of, you know, you want to find the person who has the skills to say, not only am I going to win this show, but I'm going to freaking kill it in life, right? And I think that
Yep.
that is like the beautiful thing in this is that, like, you know, you have something to contribute to the industry, not just winning cash prize or the mentorship. You know, you're adding a robust, you're creating a dialogue, right, in the food space. And I think you know, that not everybody has that, you know, and so that's what,
Yeah.
you know, we're looking for. We're sifting through. We're like, you know, who's a well-rounded person. And it's not always the person who has the best tasting dish every single time, right? It's about the journey, right? You see these chefs come in and they might be a little arrogant, right? And then they learn very quickly, like, oh, I have something to learn here, you know? And they, one week they're up, the next week they're down, next week they're like, you really, you know, they lost it for their whole team. It's a, you know, and then they win the show. It's just like, it takes you on this huge roller coaster, you know? And I think it takes a willingness to almost kind of check yourself out at the door, right? And be a vessel, right? To learn, because all of the mentors on the show have something to offer. And I will be honest and say there's things that I learned from the mentees as well, you know, and from
Sure.
the next generation, you know, and I will say specifically in how to be an effective communicator, right? Because for me, I've thrived in the environments where it's like, I was a little fearful of my life at times, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like, I might get like burned or whatever, or like, you know, like,
Yeah.
and I fucking loved it. Like, I was like, shit, yeah, this is the life for me. Like, I'm gonna crush it. I'm gonna have the sharpest knife. I'm gonna push. I'm gonna be this, you know, talk shit. Like, it's just, it was a different environment. And, you know, and I
Yeah.
thrived in it. And then it's not everyone does, you know, and it's not to say that it's a thing to celebrate, but it's you know, it was definitely you know, memorable, you know. And so it's, you know, I think so my point being is that people receive information differently, right? And for me, I receive information when it's like, you know, very cutthroat, straight to the point, like, tell
Yep.
me with your passion the things, and I'm like, fuck, I got it, yes. Don't be dancing around and saying, well, blah blah blah. That doesn't, my brain doesn't compute that, you know, but someone else's might.
Yeah.
So it's like you learn a lot about personalities, you know.
Yeah. Well, in conscious leadership, they say you meet people where they're at, and probably in the TV show environment, you don't have that flexibility, right? So more autocratic leadership is probably necessary to get shit done because you don't have the flexibility. I want to be respectful of your time. I have a couple more questions. Are you good for like 10 more minutes, or do you got to get you off in like 2 minutes?
No, I'm here for it. The only other thing I'm going to do to round out this day is hit the gym in a bit.
All right, cool. I'm throwing a Persian New Year party at my house tomorrow, and I'm making we're roasting lambs for 120 people. So I thought you might appreciate that.
Wow.
On rotisserie right now. So
what kind of
so
lamb?
my wife's like gonna. We got a leg of lamb, like they're like 6 pounds. We got like 30 of them.
Dang.
Not 30 of them, but
like
30 pounds worth,
yeah.
And they'll cook down.
Dang.
Cooked down to like 20 pounds. So we're making Persian tacos.
Cool.
So my wife's she's like, dude, bro, you gotta like come help.
Yeah.
All right. So, man, back to the show. So this is a quick question. So when I'm telling you, I was surprised. I'm like, Gordon's way nicer on this show.
Is he?
I think he's nicer because I watched Hell's Kitchen, and obviously there's some shtick there about him being like a hard ass. But I've seen him on a couple shows where he was a hard ass.
Well, the thing
but he seemed like a sweetheart.
He is, you know, and we come from a similar background. I think we didn't have these like luxuries to like, you know, it was very much a dictatorship in these kitchens back in the day before this sort of newer schools of idea and more emotional intelligence and more conversations around mental health and all of these new variables coming into leadership, right? Before it was definitely, that was not something to celebrate. And I think for me,
Sure.
in the small amount of time that I've known him, I would imagine, having children, having a family, those things could probably tend to soften a person, and
Sure.
I think and also in different environments, right? And as we all evolve, right, over time, right? I know I have, and in my styles of how I lead, I can't say I was always like the softest spoken, nicest, calmest person in the kitchen. And I think with him, I cannot say more glowing things about him. He's so present, right? He makes you feel like you're the most important person in the room, but is also a million miles away, probably thinking about the myriad of projects and things that he has in this world, right? He's the most celebrated chef on the planet, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, Darius, words can't say how proud I am to have the honor to work next to him, both as a chef and also as a business person. Like incredible, like
Yeah.
incredible. I think, and even when, he had this, other sort of persona on television of being this kind of hard ass or whatever, I'll be honest with you, the things that I would see him say, they made sense. The chicken is burned. You are
Yeah.
fucking service up. Like, I don't think he ever was like, just saying shit like that didn't have a
Yeah.
place.
You're like,
You know,
truth. Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, he's great, man. He's one of a kind human being, and and it resonates throughout his team, right? I've been able to see and meet some of his team, and it's just one of the things that sticks with me is that this woman, her and I were talking about how awesome he is, and she goes, she's not paid to say this. She goes, he's kind of never wrong. It's like, yeah, I love that. It's true.
Yeah.
The chicken is burned, dude. Like, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Just means he knows his
He
shit,
knows
right?
his
So
shit,
it's like
man.
yeah. So with working with someone like that, and so like for folks that aren't food people, this would be like a business person working with Warren Buffett, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah,
he's like
absolutely.
he's the expert in his, he's like top 0.1% of his field, right?
Absolutely.
So what's the biggest, like, number one thing you've learned from him so far in getting to do the show and spending time with him?
I would say the number one thing is, I would say that it is, there's nothing that is forsaken in any second of the day, right? Like everything is built around integrity and monetizing on time, right? This idea of time being the most valuable thing we have. It's the one non-renewable resource, right? So this idea about time being sacred, because that guy, I mean, the things that he's able to accomplish in a day is it's crazy. Like he's got like 20,000 shows. Like it's incredible. But the level and attention to detail, it's awesome. Every day before we go on set, we have morning meetings and we talk about the dishes as chefs, right? And that is the beautiful thing, the nucleus of the power of the show. It's not just a TV show. We look at it and we talk about the challenge. We think about, does this make sense? What would you make? What would I make? Oh yeah, does this protein make sense? Right? They only have 45 minutes or 30 minutes, or the second round drop. Like, we'll, and we think about it truly. And, I think that's really what separates this show's, for me, in a first person experience than anything I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, as an audience member, I can tell you, I see that. Like it seems really thoughtful,
Very thoughtful.
And yeah, super thoughtful. I love that answer. So I have big question for you. What's, like, you're doing this, like, lean into the future. It's, what's like what's your BHAG? What's your big, hairy, audacious goal from here?
That's a great question. I've had a lot of time now, bandwidth, I should say, rather, to kind of look at things in a more macro lens, right? And everyone kind of says like, "Oh, I wish I could have told 20-year-old or 30-year-old Nyesha like everything is gonna be okay. I probably would have made a lot better decisions." But it's all part of the journey. Um, but now, just turning 40, I'm kind of like, okay, cool. You hit all the goals that you said you were gonna do, right? That first day that I sat in culinary school and I said, bet, like, let's go. Like I'm me, and haven't looked up from that cutting board ever since, right? Just a juggernaut, like just grinding, dude. And now I'm kind of like, cool, like I accomplished the things. And now I'm like, what's the next chapter? And something that always I feel like uh I hope I will articulate this as well as I see it in my brain, but really it's like I want to continue to add value to our planet, in our world. Yes, for me, the craft happens to be cooking, but for me, I want to be able to provide access to more people, right? I think that, in a lot of ways, we could do for some healing, I think in a lots of parts of our world, and I think food has that power, right? I think it is purely this sort of like bridge to the future and a gateway into the past, right? And vice versa. And, I want to be able to exercise that, not just for people that have the means to do that and sit at these tables and have these incredible conversations in these sexy dim lit rooms and drink the best wine and all the things. Like, I love it. I'm here for it. But like, there's got to be space for me to be able to help and do that for people that don't have access to that. And that's what
Yeah.
I feel that in my chest. You know what I mean? So I think that I want to do some stuff that has a deeper meaning for me.
Yeah, that's cool. Purpose, right?
Totally, dude.
Passion to purpose.
Totally.
Yeah, profit to purpose. I love
Mm.
that. Um, Man, we're running out of time. I wanted to talk to you about the movie, The Menu. And my older son and I watched it, and I was like, "Oh, this," and he's like, "Dad, this is incredible," and I'm like, "It's such a good movie," but we don't have time for that. You like the movie? Thumbs up.
Well, it's taken me 4 sessions to get through it. I've watched it in parts, in quarters, and I still have the last quarter to finish. Um, it's triggering for me. Oh
Oh,
my God, it's lived experience for me, like those kitchens of just like I am a robot. No, chef, I don't have any feelings. Like
yeah.
it's just over the top, man. That and The Bear. Have you watched The Bear on FX? Oh, you don't watch TV, but
No, no, no. I know of it though,
yeah,
and I like that guy because he's from he was on another show that was really popular.
Thor,
I haven't seen
not
that though.
Thor, I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen
Oh,
it
it's
yet.
great. I
Is it
highly
good? The
recommend.
Bear.
Yeah,
All
and your
right,
son would, and you'd probably really enjoy that program. That brought me
all
to
right.
tears.
I'll put that on.
Yeah. Oh,
Really?
it's
All
great.
right. I'll throw that on the list. All right. So I told you the question we end with, but I decided to throw in another question in because so whenever I used to I had a pretty big company and I would onboard all of our team and I would say, "What's your death meal? Your last meal on earth?" And I'd make them tell me what their death meal was. So I'm going to share with you my death meal, and I want you to share with me your death
Okay.
meal. So my death meal, there's a restaurant in San Francisco called Piseta 211, which is Alice Waters' favorite place to get pizza. And they make this California pizza, pepperoni pizza, and just unbelievable. They have another restaurant called Paladar 511 in New Orleans, but pepperoni pizza from Piseta 211, flourless chocolate
Oh,
cake with hand whipped cream that they make there, and then they do a cheese board salad. It's like unbelievable. It's if you ever go to San Francisco, go to Pizza 211 if you like pizza. If you don't like pizza, then disregard what I said. But I love pizza. I'm kind of a pizza fanatic, and that's my death meal. So
I love it.
I showed you mine. You show me yours. You show me
Deal.
yours
You
now.
go, I go. Here we go. I love a dry aged steak. So I'm gonna say since there's no like I'm not worried about having a heart attack, I'm gonna say I want it to be the most like richest meal ever. So I would say, okay, starting from the plateware, it would be like a beautiful like Bernardo plate, right? Some like beautiful fine china, and then it would have like some beautiful braised short rib, like a beef duo, and I would have like a dry aged ribeye, like medium rare, and then I would have like a seared piece of foie gras and some beautiful like petite peppery arugula. I would have some like butter poached lobster on it also, and with like a little bit of like a chive hollandaise or béarnaise sauce, probably béarnaise. And then yeah, I would have like a myriad of sauces. I would have like a beautiful bordelaise, like a béarnaise, so I could just dip and have fun.
I
I
love it.
know. And then no, I don't think I need any vegetables. I think the arugula is fine. Or maybe some sort, I don't know, something comforty, you know, like, but I'm like, I like to like taste a lot of things. So that's why it's like so PC. And then I would probably have like a sticky toffee pudding. That's like one of my favorite desserts. With like a beautiful,
Yeah.
like really like vanilla-y, delicious custardy ice cream. Yeah,
Oh,
that's what I want.
I forgot to tell you what I would drink. I would drink my drink is a double Jack on the Rock. It's my death meal. So
Yes.
Big Rock,
Yeah.
Big Rock. I'm Big Rock. So sorry, in your drink, of
And the
course, in the
drink,
last meal.
yeah, I mean, since we're going all in, most likely a brown spirit. Yeah, that or like a big red wine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Big Red would
you
be
know
good
what I
too.
mean? Yeah,
Yeah, I love it. That's the first. You're the first person I've asked that to.
fitting.
You don't know how many times I've had people tell me Thanksgiving dinner. They're like Thanksgiving dinner, just and I'm like that's a pretty smart answer, you know, because that's a good dinner too.
Totally.
And in my family we did like because we did Italian with our Thanksgiving dinner. It'd be like raviolis and
Yeah,
Thanksgiving because I'm Italian.
yeah.
So funny. So we always end the show on our greatness question. So I want to ask this to you, and then we'll give people all the different ways they can learn more about you and all the greatness you've brought to this earth
Aw, love it.
so far and in the future. All right, so Nyesha, here we go. What is the number one barrier to creating greatness in the world that you've overcome in your life, and how did you overcome it?
Wow. The greatest barrier, I would say, most likely is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. You know, I would say from a large sort of ethos, that has been the greatest accomplishment, right? Because I had to really get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? Because it's like just as you start to get comfortable, like you're knowing that you've learned all the facets that could be attained in any one particular subject. So once you start to feel comfort, I mean, comfort is a beautiful thing, but I think making yourself willingly be uncomfortable for the exchange of knowledge and leveling up is a big key to success, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. My gosh, here we are at the end of the show. I'd love, so look, how can people, like, obviously you're on Fox, on Next Level Chef. Where can they hook you up for social or websites? Just give us it
Yeah,
all.
I'd love
Give
to.
us the whole shebang.
Yeah. Well, Next Level Chef is airing currently on Fox and Hulu. I also host this incredible digital series called Plateworthy. And we're actually heading to SF next week to shoot our new run. So people definitely look out for that. Just type Plateworthy, my name, Nyesha, Nyesha, and it'll pop up. It's really fun. Highly recommend watching it, especially the fun series I shot out of my apartment here in the pandemic. That's really where I feel like everything started to kick off for me. Is I literally tied a GoPro to my chest and my head and put them all over my place and cooked food. And that's when our own came on. And so Plateworthy on digital. I'm on Instagram at Nyesha Joyce, which is my middle name, Joyce. First name Nyesha. Same as Twitter, and same on Facebook.
Okay, awesome. And your website's NyeshaArrington.com, is that
Correct.
correct? Awesome. So, audience, You heard it. We're going to put all this stuff in the show notes. You got to check out the show. It's really entertaining. And I'm a hard critic. Like, I'm not a person, like I said, I don't watch TV because I'm like generally not entertained by it. And it's just so entertaining. You can watch it with the kids. You can watch it with yourself. And you got to watch Nyesha just bust some shit up because she's so tough on people. It's like my favorite part of the show. I'm like, oh, shit. She didn't have any of that. No, you're a beast. I fucking love
Thank
it.
you.
So much gratitude, Nyesha, having you on the show. I was looking forward to this, and this exceeded my expectations. You are such a freaking rock star.
My pleasure, Darius. Thank you. And congrats on everything that you've accomplished.
I'm trying, man. You know, just doing the
Things,
you know, just getting it done.
You.
But you know, just getting after it. So, gosh, audience, listen. Look, leaders were givers. Share this episode with anybody and everybody that needs to hear it, because I would tell you my biggest takeaway from this entire conversation is that, Nyesha, you're someone that wasn't afraid to get after your passions to create greatness. And so life is so easy to not do that. And you did it. And I think everyone needs to hear this. So audience, share this. With that said, until next time, we love you. Peace out. You are listening to The Greatness Machine, and that's a wrap for today. Listen, if you love what you heard, subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform that you're tuning in on so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. We have tons of great people coming on, and we're stoked to have you here to enjoy it with us. Leave us a review. Tell us what you love most about this particular episode. We love getting the reviews. We love to see what you guys love most. And if this particular episode, made you think of someone who's leveling up in their business and in their life, print screen, share it with them. Leaders are the best givers. And after all, we're all here to support and grow with each other. And in case you want to see some of the fun behind the scenes shots or some of the things that we're doing, I'm actually writing about this in my weekly newsletter. Go to www.therealdarius.com and subscribe to my newsletter. We're talking about fun things like business and life and mindfulness and cryptocurrencies and gosh, I don't even know, everything and anything, but it's tons of fun stuff I write about. I try to get it out on a weekly basis. You can subscribe at www.therealdarius.com. And with that said, look, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. I love you. Peace. We're out of here. See you guys on the next one.
She's my lover.